Cold weather continues to take a toll on area residents. The so-called polar vortex also plaguing large parts of the rest of Canada and the U.S. And police on the lookout for a syringe-wielding thief.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, wind chill warnings and another blast of Arctic air have invaded Thunder Bay and region.
The bitter cold temperatures are causing headaches for some drivers, many of whom were unable to start their vehicles this morning. By mid-afternoon, CAA was so backed up that calls coming in today may not be handled until tomorrow. But as Dennis Ward reports, the brisk weather also means brisk business for some.
Or other winters.
This is the busiest it's been in 20 years.
Wayne Salatino says CAA crews are swamped right now. It's so busy, even their own fleet are starting to break down and are in need of service. People calling CAA for a boost at home right now are waiting up to 24 hours. Salatino's advice is to be patient.
Last week alone, we probably handled close to 900 calls, and we're already, probably at least 150 to 200 calls already started this week.
A lot of calls to CAA for a boost end up being a tow due to a dead battery.
Good season for us, bad season for everybody else.
Fat Guy's auto parts owner Doug Wilson says batteries, winter tires, and block heaters are flying off the shelves. Wilson received a shipment of batteries on Friday and will need to order more.
I think we sold 70 or 80 on Friday, so lots. I haven't done a number count lately, but it's skid loads. Like the guys that drop them off, the transport guys, are like, wow, it's a lot of batteries.
This cold snap has also meant brisk business for Done Right Auto Service. The tire department is full speed ahead, and they've installed double the amount of batteries already this year compared to last winter.
Right now, with the amount of severe cold we've had, we are seeing a lot more batteries, a lot more block heaters, a lot more freeze-ups, a lot more cold-related repairs.
Not everyone is seeing the silver lining during this viciously cold stretch. Despite the wind chill warnings, students were still in schools, although some were a little late because school buses took longer to start, and there was a lot of red on the arrivals and departures board at the Thunder Bay Airport, with other parts of the country dealing with a mixed bag of nasty weather conditions. Dennis Ward, TBT News.
Well, some people might be surprised that even with the steady blast of cold weather, there are still patches of open water on local rivers. Thunder Bay police are warning everyone, especially snowmobilers, that rivers are still unsafe to ride on and some parts don't have any ice coverage. One in particular is the Cam River. These images were taken off of Harstone Road. As early as a week ago, there was visible water, and police warn if you are going onto the rivers, know the trail first.
I'd be very concerned with being on any of the local rivers at this time. I don't believe them safe personally. I know I won't be venturing out on them on my sled. Bad time of the year to be going for a swim.
City police want this year to start off safe with no one going through the ice. They're also asking that snowmobilers don't drink and ride.
Recent cold weather has made almost everyone burrow in, but local experts say pests like ticks can't survive when these cold temperatures are sustained. The local tick population has seemingly been on the rise over the past few years, with hundreds of the bugs brought into the district health unit to check for Lyme disease. Health unit entomologist Ken Deacon says the difference between -20 and -30 degrees Celsius has a significant impact on a deer tick's ability to adapt and live.
It's like they have antifreeze in their blood, and so they're good to maybe -20, -25, something like that. But at a temperature lower than that for any length of time, and it does take time for them to actually experience the lethal condition, and then and that's it. They've had it.
Thunder Bay is on a flight path for migratory birds who carry ticks, and spring testing is showing a shift in the district's Lyme-diseased deer tick count. Positive Lyme tests were down from 20% in 2012 to 10% in 2013. Fall numbers have yet to be calculated for last year, but while Deacon predicts a decline in ticks overall, he cautions that checking for ticks next summer will be just as important as any other year.
Thunder Bay has experienced its first max robbery of 2014. Just before midnight last night, a male armed with a syringe robbed the convenience chain's location on Simpson Street. This surveillance video shows the robbery in progress. The accused had fled prior to arrival of police officers, and fortunately, the clerk was not injured. The accused is described as a Caucasian male in his 30s, between 5'6" and 5'8", with a thin build. He was wearing an orange hoodie and a black toque at the time of the robbery. Anyone with information is asked to contact Thunder Bay Police or Crime Stoppers.
5 more city council candidates have filed their nomination papers for the October municipal election. Westford councillor Joe Verderamo and Red River Ward councillor Brian McKinnon are both trying for another 4-year term. Aldo Roberto is also seeking re-election as an at-large councillor. Political newcomer Andrew Brigham is also running for one of the at-large seats, and David Polhill is running for a second time in Northwood Ward.
The First Nation community is in mourning following the sudden passing last night of their longtime chief. Chuck McPherson had been the chief of Couchiching First Nation since 1998. The band manager and council met today to discuss his passing. They have decided not to comment on the situation until McPherson's family arrives in the community located near Fort Francis. McPherson made headlines in 2010 when his First Nation set up a toll booth on the Noden Causeway during the May long weekend. He said it was the only way to get the attention of the provincial and federal governments over unresolved land claims.
It's a disappointing end to a disappointing Thunder Bay shipping season, as the bitterly cold temperatures and thick ice on Lake Superior have resulted in another down month. Ryan Bonazzo has the numbers and explains what's to come in 2014.
It's been a tough finish to Thunder Bay's shipping season, a December that got off to a relatively strong start, according to Port Authority CEO Tim Heaney, slowed considerably when temperatures plunged.
It's been a tough finish due to the ice conditions, so we have lost a certain amount of shipments to that. Rail car supply is another issue. With this cold weather, nothing really works that well. So it's been a little lower than we'd hoped at the close.
More than 1 million tons of cargo passed through the port in December, but that's down significantly from 2012, when better than 1.2 million tons was handled. And it's more of the same in what's been a down year in general. This year's estimated 6.6 million ton cargo figure falls well short of the 7.8 million posted in 2012. And the number of ships to enter the port is down from 409 to 333.
We had a slow spring and a very slow summer, so we ended up the year well below average on grain. So we're below the 10-year average.
The weather isn't just wreaking havoc along Thunder Bay's waterways. For the past month, we've had to rely on an American icebreaker to keep the harbor open, as the Canadian ship is busy on the St. Mary's River. The weather has forced a bit of an early shutdown. The season will be over by the end of the week. Heaney anticipates a strong 2014, however, thanks to a large spring grain harvest this past year.
It was the largest harvest in Canadian history, so there's lots of grain still to move. So last spring was very weak, whereas the one coming up this year will be a lot stronger.
The 2014 shipping season gets underway in late March. Ryan Bonazzo, TBT News.
Well, now that the holidays are over, the pressure to pay off those credit card bills may be taking its toll, but officials at the Thunder Bay Counseling Center are offering help on how to manage that holiday debt. Education and Support Services Manager Sherry Fata says part of the problem is payday loan companies charging high interest rates. One of the tips given to help manage the debt is to watch the amount of interest that comes with it. Fata says some people may not know how to manage the debt that already exists, and that's why many turn to their counseling services to learn how to better manage their money.
The first one is really budget. Everybody hates that. We actually, for a while, and we still do, use the term spending plan, because that's really what it's about. It's not about stopping people from spending money. It's about how do you spend your money wisely, and do you know what you're spending and what you have available to spend? That's really the very first key, and that's step number one. It's the top tip related to anything. If you want to save money, if you want to plan to have some money down the road for something, you've got to do that budget.
Fata says the recent rise in usage at the Debt Counseling Center can be attributed to not only increased debt from the holidays, but New Year's resolutions as well.
It's hard to believe that the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center has been with us for nearly a decade, and the building continues to pick up awards, as it was recently ranked as the 6th most architecturally impressive hospital in the world. That list was compiled by Online Masters in Public Health. There are 30 hospitals on the list, and the regional hospital is the only one from Canada. The facility was honored for its abundance of natural light, including a 3-story atrium. The hospital's manager of capital planning and facilities says the design of the building came from the environment of the Northwest and from frontline staff input.
Any project that we do, any capital project, we ensure that we have a patient or family advisor sit on the planning committee so that their input, generates greater outcomes because they'll know what type of service, what kind of environment they would like to be brought into. I think the key features when they were making their selection was just how patient-friendly the environment was, how natural was the facility, and how user-friendly the design was.
The hospital will celebrate 10 years since its grand opening on February 23rd. Aside from being proud of their ranking, hospital officials see this as an excellent opportunity to recruit more healthcare providers for their various institutions.
The Thunder Bay family has been featured on the cover of Reader's Digest Our Canada magazine. The pictures are from last year and they're now being featured in the January edition. Sliding happily down the front cover of the magazine are Anderson and Brindes Ventrudo. In February of last year, the pair went sledding at Chapels Park. Their dad, Dan Ventrudo, had just bought a new camera and decided the warm day would be a great one to take photos. He submitted them to the magazine, and in September, the family was contacted so the pictures could be used in the winter edition.
At first, I thought it was a scam. When I got an email from Reader's Digest, I thought it was spam and I nearly trashed it. And then when I read it a little bit more carefully, I thought this actually could be true. But I actually didn't really believe it until I saw it on the magazine rack this week.
It feels pretty cool because you never really get to be on a magazine cover. It's pretty rare. And then I'm proud of my dad for taking the picture.
I'm proud of him for doing it.
Explain. Okay.
Because he's really good at taking pictures.
Reader's Digest Our Canada magazine has a readership of more than 1 million people across Canada. Ventrudo says he already has a few more pictures in mind to submit in the future.
Just some great shots there. They're wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah, it's nice to see those kids smiling while they were sledding, because if you were out sledding today, you weren't smiling, right, Fiona?
Well, you wouldn't be able to tell because you were probably completely covered down to here and up to there. That's what I was seeing when I was out driving earlier today. And I show you this image not because you didn't already know it was cold, but because, yes, there is moderation in our future, but we've got a little ways to go. But it is out there. It's sometimes a little hard to believe, especially when you start the day with a wind chill of -47. Now, we had some drifting snow with all those winds gusting at times up to 45 kilometers per hour. The temperature did rise to -26, but with all those winds, it still felt closer to -39. And across the region, that's being felt pretty much everywhere. Fairly clear night, just a few clouds here and there. But these temperatures really just don't do it justice because the wind chill values are very dangerous, very extreme, despite it says -27 in Atikokan, and you know it's closer to -40, -42. As we head a little bit further eastward, though, Sault Ste. Marie has some snow and drifting snow. They're a touch warmer at -18. They don't have quite the wind chill values that we have been seeing. But the warnings, this is all wind chill warnings, basically across the region, and wind chills of -35 or colder pretty much across the board. Just a few areas, ironically, further north, it's where there are no wind chill warnings. I'm not quite sure about that, but that's the way Environment Canada is going with it. Tonight, the temperature is actually not going to drop very much. We might actually get a boost in temperature over the next hour or so, and then we will drop to a low of -27, of course. Yes, the wind chill will be close to -44, and that's because of the winds gusting from the west up to 33 kilometers per hour with some patchy cloud. As you heard earlier on, and you've probably heard several times over the last few days, we are dealing with this polar vortex, which has moved down, and it's causing this Arctic blast to move through. We have to get on the other side of it. There is a possibility you could see some nicer temperatures by maybe as early as Friday. But the weekend is especially looking good. I'll have more details on what is in the far, far future. Good news coming, but that's later on the news hour.
People looking forward to that, Fiona. All right, thanks very much. If you're a proponent of that old saying, misery loves company, you can take heart in the fact that, as those maps showed, we have a lot of company right now in dealing with the cold temperatures. A great big portion of Canada and the United States, rather, suffering through the same cold spell that we are. We'll have more on that for you as your news hour continues.
only a 10-minute bike ride. You just spin really fast, you build up some sweat.
It's a lot more fun than waiting outside for the bus.
The weather woes being experienced here in northwestern Ontario are also being felt elsewhere in Canada.
Depending on where you were today, you may have experienced dangerously cold temperatures, travel delays, and something called flash freezing. Forecasters are predicting that in some parts of the country, things will get worse before they get better. Ron Charles reports.
In Montreal this morning, it was unseasonably warm weather and freezing rain that turned sidewalks icy and treacherous.
J'ai mis mes crampons un matin.
This commuter says she attached ice climbing crampons to her boots. Conditions were so icy in Montreal overnight that 2 CanJet charter flights bringing vacationers back from Cuba had to be diverted to Fredericton.
I have no idea. I have 3 kids. I'm with some friends with 3 kids. I have my elderly mother. We have no idea how we're getting back to Montreal.
In Ottawa as well, sidewalks were both slushy and slippery.
Unfortunately, I took my dog out first thing this morning and went down right away. Landed on my bad knee, so I prepared myself to come out this afternoon.
The National Capital Commission temporarily closed the Rideau Canal Skateway because of the bad, choppy ice conditions. Wet, slushy, and icy conditions in central Canada, extreme cold in the west, down to -30 in Winnipeg, with wind chill warnings of -40. Still not enough to stop this pair's commute.
It's only a 10-minute bike ride. You just spin really fast, you build up some sweat.
It's a lot more fun than waiting outside for the bus, right? The bus that's always late.
Those bone-chilling cold temperatures from the west will be spreading east next. Temperatures in Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto are expected to plummet tonight. In what forecasters are calling a flash freeze, all of that melted snow will turn to ice, making for even more treacherous going. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
Temperatures in the United States have also taken a polar plunge, and 140 million people are feeling the chill. That's almost half of the U.S. population. Neil McDonald has a look at their record-breaking cold.
This winter is still young, but it's vicious.
My eyes freezing, my nose freezing, my mouth freezing, everything.
Most Americans aren't used to this kind of cold. This is Ottawa-style cold. Some cities in the U.S. Midwest are being told to expect -50 degrees Fahrenheit, or about -45 Celsius. That tests even Chicago's famous stoicism.
I was in Alaska for a year in the service, so this is nothing new.
All right, so does this feel worse than Alaska?
It's about the same.
The record in embarrassed Minnesota was -64, set in 1996.
I got a thermometer from the weather service that goes to 100 below. If it gets that cold, I don't want to be here.
In this nation of routine overbooking, flight schedules are predictably chaotic. Airlines are telling passengers it will take days, not hours, to get them out of their airport campgrounds.
I just want to go home.
In the New York City area, the phenomenon of ice fog, well known in Canada, descended on frightened drivers.
It's like a cloud, a nebulous cloud, and it's slippery. It's very slippery.
And in Washington, an Associated Press photographer took a picture of this apparently homeless man warming himself near a government building on Saturday.
I was really struck by how young he was. He didn't look like he'd been on the street a long time.
Nicholas Simmons was in fact missing from his home in upstate New York and ill. His mother saw the picture and his family rushed to D.C. Nick is alive, but obviously not well, his mother posted on Facebook. This is by far the greatest example of God's love and divine intervention I have ever experienced. Others won't be as lucky. Winter this week will be plain dangerous. Neil McDonald, CBC News, Washington.
The latest blast of bad weather is disrupting business all over North America. The snow days are piling up, and so too are the concerns about damage being done to companies who can't function in the chaos. Howard Gould reports.
In this winter of extreme storms, the losses for airlines.
By the time we get there tonight, it's going to be what time? 9 o'clock? Like, holy cow.
And insurance companies could be huge. But companies of all kinds and in all kinds of places are dealing with disruptions. This firm sells and services advanced cutting machines. Through various storms, staff have had trouble getting in, and today's suppliers, some in the United States, aren't open at all.
It's crazy. Everything is just slowed down. You can't get parts as fast as you'd like. The supply chain's much slower. You have customers getting frustrated.
But while the extraordinary winter weather is creating losers, there are winners too. This outdoor store is seeing sales soar.
We certainly noticed an uptick. There's been an increase in things like ski packages and then warm winter apparel. So hats, mitts, and gloves are really popular. Balaclavas.
This team isn't winning. The cost of the game they just played is a lot higher than budgeted.
We planned on coming back home right after the game. Instead, we end up paying an extra night for a bus and 16 extra hotel rooms and 3 meals the next day. So that one trip in itself is fairly significant.
However, in the cold calculation of economists, most losses will be made up later, and so the economy is unlikely to suffer.
But it's not an economic event in a sense that it's not going to change the trajectory of the North American economy in a very significant way.
But there are many weeks of winter yet to come. And small companies, the ones that typically find it hardest to cope with big disruptions, are hoping there aren't more storms on the way. Howard Gould, CBC News, Toronto.
On a day when record cold is making news across the continent, a protest about climate change took center stage at an event involving the Prime Minister. Two protesters managed to break into a question and answer session involving Stephen Harper and the chair of the Vancouver Board of Trade.
I'd like to take a minute and have some folks removed from the stage.
The protesters were pushed away by security and moved out quickly. One of the signs said, "Climate Justice Now," and the other had a line saying, "The Conservatives take climate change seriously," with the words crossed out. Harper responded by saying it wouldn't be BC without such a protest. The event went on as scheduled.
RCMP Corporal Ron Francis is due in a Fredericton court tomorrow, charged with assaulting another officer. Francis is the New Brunswick Mountie who turned in his uniform in November after he was disciplined for smoking medicinal marijuana while wearing the red serge. That is forbidden by the force. He has spent the past month undergoing a psychiatric assessment.
A Saskatoon woman accused of killing her own son made her first court appearance today. Police responded to a 911 call on Saturday from the house where Kelly Johnson lived with her 5-year-old son, Jonathan Vetter. The boy was pronounced dead on site. Police aren't saying how he died, but they've charged his mother with first-degree murder. Johnson, who is 35 years old, has a history of mental illness and is known to police. She will remain in custody until she returns to court tomorrow.
What is considered to be the greatest collection of Canadian stamps ever collected is now for sale. An Ontario collector set out decades ago to have the best in the world. Now that he's achieved that, he's putting all 10,000 plus pieces on the auction block. Stephen Bull sat down with him and got a sneak peek.
No, stamps are a good investment.
Meet Ron Brigham. You've likely never heard of him unless you're in the stamp world. There, he's a legend.
Singapore.
He's won multiple awards around the world for his collection.
And this is Canada's rarest stamp.
Getting these gems wasn't easy or cheap. Still, he tried to buy the only other known copy of this one.
I offered him $300,000 for it, but he wouldn't sell the stamp, so he still has. At that time, there were only 2. Now we think there are 3. So.
His coming auction is already making waves.
Probably the most significant collection ever to come on the market.
Sam Hakim's family has been buying and selling stamps since the 40s. He says this sale is historic.
He's acquired some extremely rare material that I've never seen, that's probably been in hiding for decades. So this is a lifetime opportunity for the serious collector.
That this stamp
it's so good, Canada Post once had to borrow these one-of-a-kind dies to recreate a historic stamp.
Well, it made us feel pretty good.
Brigham set out to win the World Grand Prix of stamp collecting. Now that he's won the ultimate prize, it's time to move on.
It's Canada's heritage as far as I'm concerned. It's never been put together as one unit before.
And it likely never will. The collection is being sold off in pieces, and given the rarity of some of them, it's unlikely anyone will spring for the whole collection.
No Canadian stamp has ever sold for $1 million before. We think there's 3 or 4, maybe 6 in this collection that might sell for that price.
In total, it's expected to yield anywhere from $10 to $25 million. And there's actually going to be multiple auctions spread over a few years, first of which will take place in February. Stephen Bull, CBC News, Toronto.
Here's a look at a performance that puts a little sparkle on the stage. Lights, camera, people. This group is Ensra from Japan, and the performance is called Fumakai. It combines multimedia with dance and martial arts. And there is an Olympic connection here. The group was part of Japan's Olympic bid and helped Tokyo land the 2020 Games. Spectacular, isn't it?
Yeah, really cool.
Let's take a look at today's activity on the markets now. In Toronto, the TSX down 53 points to 13,495. The Dow dropped almost 45 points to 16,425. And the NASDAQ lost 18, closing at 41.13. Canadian dollar was down over 1/10 cent today to 93.88 cents US. Gold held steady at $1,238 an ounce. Oil dipped slightly to $93.43 a barrel. Well, the march to this year's Super Bowl continues. Unfortunately, Randy's Bengals and my Packers aren't among those who are marching on.
No, this is true, but our director, Blair, he's pretty happy his Carolina Panthers are still alive.
We don't care, Blair.
He definitely does. Well, the conference semifinals are now set in the NFL following action yesterday afternoon. 3 of the 4 games were close. We'll recap Sunday's action with the second NFC wildcard game that took place in Green Bay. Less than 2 minutes to go with the game tied at 20. San Francisco facing a 3rd and 8. Colin Kaepernick can't find a receiver, so he'll do the next best thing and run for a first down. And that would set up place kicker Phil Dawson. The ageless one is money on the final play of regulation. Sorry, Barry, the Pack can't win them all. Niners win 23-20. They're off to Carolina to face the Panthers next Sunday. In the AFC, a horrible day for Bengals quarterback Andy Dalton. Cincinnati's quarterback turned the ball over not once, not twice, but 3 times, including 2 picks. San Diego wins easily 27-10. They'll travel to Denver to face the Broncos on Sunday. Well, Finland shocked Sweden 3-2 on Sunday to win the gold medal at the World Junior Hockey Championships. As for Canada, for the 2nd straight year, they failed to medal, losing the bronze medal game 2-1 to Russia. It's now 5 years since we last won a gold, and as Amanda Margison tells us, some are asking what needs to change.
And the Russians will take the bronze with a 2-1 victory.
Always seen as a powerhouse, Team Canada, 4th place again.
We had a chance to do something, and we didn't, so it's really tough.
Difficult to swallow for these young players. 2 years in a row swept off the podium by the Russians. At a charity event today, this NHLer remembers the feeling of losing at the World Juniors.
Probably one of the more devastating moments of my career.
That was the year the juniors were held in Saskatoon, but at least then, Team Canada made it to the gold medal game.
See, these European teams are developing some pretty good hockey players, so I just think it's a lot more equal now than it used to be, than the whole, Canada, Americans, like it used to be, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Now it's a lot more diverse.
Finland, Sweden, 2 teams beaten many times over by the Canadians in years past.
We used to be the measuring stick. Now we're no longer the measuring stick.
A few factors, he says, are at play, including some NHL clubs refusing to allow their junior players to take part.
Lots of money has been poured into development programs throughout this country to produce those players. At least they can pay back and play in this tournament.
But other high-ranking juniors also stayed home, not even considered for the team.
Hockey Canada should smarten up and get the best players and work at not being political.
Selection was done differently this year. Hockey Canada inviting fewer players to try out. Still, this loss aside, the head coach says this was the country's best team. The World Juniors are coming to Canada next year, played right here in Toronto and in Montreal. And that means the pressure to medal will be fierce. And many of these players will know what that pressure feels like. Back again to represent their country. Next year, they say, even hungrier for a win. Amanda Margison, CBC News, Toronto.
Your LAKU University Thunderwolves sit atop the OUA West Division with an impressive 13-3 record. Not bad for a team with a new head coach, a new system, and lots of new players. They were firing on all cylinders at the Fort William Gardens, sweeping the Toronto Blues Saturday night. Ryan Benazzo has more.
Coming into Saturday's game, the Thunderwolves had scored a very respectable number of shorthanded goals, 3. On Saturday, they scored 3 in one game. Captain Andrew Wilkins was a force on the PK, scoring 2 of the goals, including an empty netter, and setting up the other for Ryan McGill.
Night in, night out, our kill's been progressing. It's been getting better. I think as a unit, we try and stay aggressive and take away their time and space, and as of right now, it's been working.
I think we made a few small adjustments for the weekend. Macker kind of saw some stuff in some game tape, and we followed his game plan, and it worked out for us. I don't think he was trying to get, shorthanded goals out of it, but we were able to read what they were doing and got some good bounces and some nice passes and able to get a few.
Bill McDonald knows that kind of special teams night doesn't come along very often, but when a shorthanded opportunity presents itself, he knows he has players in the lineup that can take advantage.
Whether it's, Ryan McGill or Wilkie or whoever, they're allowed to pressure down the ice, and when they get some chances, they were going in on the penalty kill for us tonight.
On a night when the Wolves lost Jake Carrick early to a lower body injury, they also had to rely on their depth. McGill had one of his best games of the season, seeing significant ice time on the penalty kill and the power play. Fourth-line winger James Delory, meanwhile, was a physical presence all night long and clearly agitated a number of Toronto players.
James there with some big hits to start us off, and he was really disciplined as well, too. There were some guys taking runs at him, and he didn't get sucked into that, and drew some penalties, and then I think we scored on the one that he drew, Alcock, and then that also was one of the big turning points of the game. So like you said, it's nice to have those guys stepping up for sure.
As someone who's been in and out of the lineup all season long, Delory says it was nice to find a way to contribute.
Macker's been pretty good in talking to me where, he wants me to go and not really force hits or anything, let the hits come to me. And, sometimes you kind of got to take a couple deep breaths and relax yourself out there, especially when guys are in your face, but it's part of the game, so it's fun.
Well, a month from today, the Winter Olympics will get underway in Russia. A year ago, Canada was ranked #1. Now we're a solid 4th, but we're primed to peak in a number of new sports. Peter Armstrong has more in this report.
Humphreys will make it across and take the gold.
2013 was a good year for Canada's Olympic hopefuls.
Michael Kingsbury from Canada.
But the World Cup circuit, even a bountiful one, is not the Olympics, and every athlete knows it.
I want to work hard on my technique, my jumps, and stay always at the top.
Charging to the finish.
The top is an elusive place. In Vancouver, Canada won 26 medals, 14 of them gold. It was an unprecedented feat, one that now feeds enormous pressure to repeat.
I trained 12, 13, 14 years of my life for 3 seconds.
Jeff Bean competed in 3 Olympic Games, but in those days, he says Canadian fans were content just seeing Canadians taking part. Now, he says, they want, even expect medals.
In the past, we've always wanted to be this demure nation. Now, this is what we want. This is what we should get. We're looking at World Cup results. We should get these medals.
The CBC has been tracking international competitions for the past year. Canada's currently ranked 3rd. Traditional strengths in hockey, speed skating, and figure skating now augmented by new sports emerging from the X Games.
Let me jump in.
Canada's chef de mission gets pretty worked up on the subject of medal counts. He was one of the crazy Canucks in the 1980s, and he's seen firsthand Canada's aspirations move from hope to expectation of medals, and has a bold prediction.
I think we will win more medals than we did in Vancouver. We'll be the only nation to have done that twice, hosted the games, and then won more medals the next time around.
And so with that, it seems the evolution of Canada's attitude and aspirations is complete. From the chef de mission right on down, Canadians are no longer just hoping for medals, they expect them to be delivered, as if the pressure on athletes wasn't enough already. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
4 games in the NHL tonight, including Calgary visiting Colorado, while Montreal welcomes Florida. Last night, Corey Perry had the overtime winner as Anaheim edged Vancouver 4-3. Evgeny Malkin pawed a pair as the Penguins grounded the Winnipeg Jets 6-5. Carolina doubled up Nashville 2-1. San Jose held off Chicago in overtime 3-2. And Edmonton upset Tampa Bay 5-3. NBA last night, Terrence Ross and the Raptors going for a 6th straight win against LeBron James and the Miami Heat. Early in the 3rd, DeMar DeRozan nails 3 of his team-high 26 points. That would put Toronto up by 4. But in the 4th, the Heat rallied to lead by 4 as LeBron would proceed to hit the jumper. He would finish up with a game-high 30 points. Miami would proceed to win at 102-97. That snaps the Raptors' season-high 5-game winning streak, and things won't get easier for them. They're up against Indiana, the Pacers in Indiana tomorrow night. And it's top-ranked Florida State and number 2 Auburn tonight in the Bowl Championship game. It will decide the top team in U.S. college football this season. Next season, a playoff will replace the Bowl Series. CFL News, Toronto slotback Andre Dury has signed a 3-year contract that will pay him about $140,000 annually. The Thunder Bay North Stars have moved up to 12th. That's up 1 spot in this week's Canadian junior hockey rankings. Fort Francis stays at number 5. These Lakers, on a roll of late, they won 6 in a row. And England will be without winger Theo Walcott for this summer's World Cup of Soccer in Brazil. He tore a ligament in his left knee in Saturday's 2-0 win by Arsenal over Tottenham. And for those who are freezing, this should warm you up. Spring training about 6 weeks away. in Dunedin, Florida. You can head down to Dunedin now. And
Something coming up tomorrow, even more important. I know a lot of people
right.
are going to be watching for it. Of course, the Canadian men's hockey team will be announced. Thunder Bay's Patrick Sharp, widely expected to be a part of that team. Still hope for Eric Stahl, although I understand he was hurt this weekend, which may indeed hurt his chances, but we keep our fingers crossed nonetheless.
yeah, and of course, the other two stalls are on the bubble. That would be Mark and Jordan, and Kenora's Mike Richards could make it if they're looking for more leadership.
And some checking as well. He
Yeah.
helped defensively a lot. Okay, looking forward to that tomorrow. Thanks, Randy.
Yep.
All right. Well, for those of you who figured you know the real story when you see those movies that are based on a true story, well, we've got a series that's going to give the real facts that you thought you knew. Tonight, they're talking about Apollo 13 with more. Here's your complete lineup on TeleTalk.
Tonight's lineup has a bit of the past, the present, and the future on Global Thunder Bay. Starting at 8 on Almost Human, a serial killer uses the web to broadcast his victims' final moments. Then at 9, forget the Tom Hanks movie. We've got the real stories of the men of Apollo 13. And at 10 on the Blacklist, Liz and a mysterious stranger team up to save Red and Wrestler. Over on CKPR Thunder Bay tonight, we've got a deadly mystery and a comedy of errors. First at 8 on Murdoch Mysteries, the lead singer of a traveling ragtime group turns up dead. And at 9, The Best Laid Plans is a humorous look at politics and backroom maneuvering. TeleTalk is brought to you by Points, the traffic ticket specialists.
Well, we've mentioned it a few times on the News Hour so far. It's cold right across the country, Fiona.
Which basically means if you don't like it and it's too cold for you, you're just going to have to lump it because there's almost no escaping this stuff. We topped out with a high of minus 26, not particularly great, but it's this minus 47 wind chill that we are just trying to get over this morning. And this was surprisingly not a record. Who knew? So minus 26 with some drifting snow today and more on the way. If we take a look at what's going on in the west, Vancouver's got some cloud. They're currently at 3 Celsius. Prince George on the other side of the freezing mark at minus 3. Not too bad in Edmonton today, minus 2 under cloudy skies. And Calgary sitting on the freezing mark right now. Their daytime highs are going to be well above the freezing mark by Wednesday. So they're actually enjoying some moderate temperatures. And this is what we want to see a little bit more of, at least to get a break from this bone-chilling Arctic vortex that we're in the midst of. Now, Saskatoon currently at minus 22 with some snow. And earlier today, they too saw a wind chill value of minus 47, as did Regina. Right now, Regina is enjoying a balmy minus 41 wind chill under partly cloudy skies. Winnipeg currently at minus 27, and they too are under the same wind chill warning that we are experiencing right now. So you know how cold it is there. As we head into southern Ontario, Toronto too is under a wind chill warning. But of course, for this part of the country, that means something a little different than what it means for us. For us, a wind chill warning means extreme wind chill values of minus 40 or colder. For Toronto, that means minus 38 wind chill for tonight. Already the winds are gusting up to about 65 kilometers per hour. Ottawa currently at minus 8 has had snow for much of the afternoon. Their wind chill is expected to dip down to about minus 33 overnight. Quebec City currently at minus 2 is experiencing a wind warning. They've seen gusts up to 65 kilometers per hour right now. Overnight tonight could go up to 90 kilometers per hour. And as we head into the Maritimes, we've got some showers happening in Fredericton, and there is a rainfall and a freezing rain warning. Flash freezing is the concern for Fredericton. Charlottetown under cloudy skies is at 5 Celsius. Halifax at 8, also cloudy conditions. And Halifax is actually under a rainfall warning. They're expecting about 25 millimeters of rain tonight. St. John's currently at minus 7 with some freezing rain tonight. Now, if we take a look at the systems moving in, it's this warm front that we're keeping an eye on. It's got part of the warm air with it. And it's this low that's going to be moving in. So far, not much in the way of precipitation in our region for tomorrow and as we head into Wednesday. Now, unfortunately, as Wednesday comes through, high pressure center, that means rotating from a clockwise manner, which means pulling air from the northwest, which means, yes, it's another day of cold temperatures, unfortunately. But we are going to be heading at least in the right direction, but not for the next 24 hours. These are our wind chill areas, extreme wind chills anywhere from minus 40 or colder, so that's pretty much everywhere that's watching us right now. Tonight, temperatures dropping down to the minus 30s or colder. Of course, wind chill values minus 45 or colder. A little bit of snow possible into the Greenstone area. And Sault Ste. Marie also expecting some snow. That will continue into tomorrow everywhere else. Mix of sun and cloud, and temperatures once again downright frigid with very cold wind chill values. Tonight, at this hour, we're at minus 26. Wind chill is currently at about minus 40 with some drifting snow. Tonight, a low of minus 27. And the wind chill will feel like minus 44 under some patchy cloud. Then on Tuesday, a high of minus 20, sun and cloud, maybe a little bit of wind, and of course some very cold wind chill values. But you can see we're at least moving in the right direction. Minus 17 for Wednesday under partly cloudy skies. Even the overnight lows are inching their way up. By Thursday, we're down to more seasonal values, mostly cloudy, minus 10. And by Friday, minus 5. How's that for a single digit that just warms your heart? Saturday, minus 4, mostly cloudy. There's a possibility of a little bit of snow between Friday and Saturday, but those look to be our best days for a warm-up. So if you can be patient for another 48 to 72 hours, we're going to be doing good for the end of the week.
Well, patient, but just keep from freezing for the next 24 to 48 hours.
We'll do our best.
Right? Okay, thanks, Fiona. Well, to get your mind off those chilly temperatures, something warm and fuzzy for you to take a look at. That's a couple of baby panda cubs who made their debut today. Details when we return.
Life can be a bit of a struggle when you're just 5 months old, but this little one could get by on looks alone. Bao Bao made her media appearance at the National Zoo in Washington today, but she's not the only panda in the news. The public got its first glimpse of this 6-month-old cub at the Taipei Zoo in Taiwan. She's the first cub of a pair of giant pandas donated by the Chinese mainland as a goodwill gift.
Difference in size between the 5-month-old and the 6-month-old, right? They'll both be pretty big by the time it's all over. Let's recap our top story of the day. That's the top story here in Thunder Bay in northwestern Ontario, across Canada, and much of North America. That, of course, is the cold weather. And that's led to all sorts of problems with vehicles, flights not arriving in time, pipes are freezing. Yep. But the good news is, folks, that relief is on the way. By the end of the week, we should be back into more tolerable temperatures.
And go ahead.
No, you finish.
That's your early look at news, weather, and sports. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a good night.